There we go. Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. Really excited to have you guys here and have you join us for this conversation. If you have any questions tonight, feel free to drop those into the chat and we will make sure to address them while we are here, while we are live. I am looking for one more thing here to get this. Oh, there we go. Okay. It wasn't opening one of the chats. I'm like, man, that's not usually how that goes. But we all know that I always find the fun technical difficulty issues, so it's all good. But anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate you. We're going to be talking about a couple of things tonight that I am really pumped to talk about. One of them is overcoming adversity, which I think is something that a lot of folks experience. And the other one is dating after divorce, which is not something that everyone experiences, but it is something that I have experienced. So I'm really excited to dive into this. But joining me today, we have Jonathon Aslay, one of America's leading midlife self-love and relationship coaches. So I'm really excited to have you join us today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me, and I want to see tacos falling apart at some point.
I know I need like a little stuffed taco or something that I can
Yeah.
pull some pieces out of. Of course, then I would just play with it. Like I'm always playing with my necklace and my jewelry. I would just wind up playing with it. Well, so a little bit about Jonathon. Back in 2018, he lost his 19-year-old son Connor, and that grief really cracked something open in him. He started digging into why so many people struggle to find real love, and what he was able to find was that most of us are trying to date and rebuild our lives without ever having learned to love ourselves first. And that search turned into his book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? I'm throwing it in there. See, there you go. And it's become his whole mission, helping people navigate divorce, dating, and adversity by starting with the relationship they have with themselves. So again, just thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out. And folks, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. If you are looking to connect with Jonathon, I've got some links I'm going to post for you right now. Blue Bedlam, I see you here. Thank you so much for being here. If you got any questions, feel free to stick them in there. But in the meantime, go check this out. And I would love to know, Jonathon, just what made you become interested in specializing in relationship coaching?
After turning 40 and going through a divorce and losing my high-end job about 20 years ago, I found myself in the dating marketplace. And it's interesting because at that time, internet dating was kind of at its infancy. And I thought you could just, plug in what you wanted and someone would magically appear, which that did happen. And I remember the first time I met someone, we had a nice date, it was a nice person, but something wasn't right. And then, a few days later, meet another person, nice date, something wasn't right, meet another person, nice date, wasn't right. And after about 100 internet dates in my first year, I
Wow.
realized that the something wasn't right was me.
Mm,
But what was fascinating was I wasn't necessarily dating all these women. I was just talking to them. I was back then, there used to be Yahoo Personals, and you could have like these chat boxes all open up on your screen. Instead of one at a time now, you could have like six, and I'm chatting with all these people, all these women, talking about divorce and talking about the emotional effects, and in many cases, just making friendships. And I made these wonderful friendships with women, and they would just call me up and say, Jonathon, I want your advice on my dating profile. Like, can you give me the man's perspective? So I would say, well, this picture doesn't look good, and this one's out of focus, and this and this. And then, I'd read their profile and said, well, this is kind of a turn off, and this is kind of a turn on. So, and then like weeks later, I'd get a call going, oh my God, you won't believe it. I'm getting more better men kind of thing. And then they'd go, will you look at the guy's profile and tell me what you think? And at that point, my coaching business was birthed, because I was getting all these calls to get some perspective. And so I started a website called Understand Men Now. I called myself the guy spy into the male mind. And, and dating was so different back in 2006, 2007, 2008 compared to today. I mean, it's so different that and not that people are that different, but the way we connect with people are different. So
Yeah.
back then I was a pioneer. Now everybody and their brother is a dating and relationship coach. And what made me unique was I was giving women advice about men. Mostly most advice for women were given by women, but it didn't allow them the same lens of seeing their blind spots from the male perspective. So that's what made me unique back in the day. And, since that time, I've amassed 200,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. I've been a top tier dating and relationship coach for almost a decade. I've been very blessed. I'm kind of semi retired now, because I'm in a wonderful relationship. And why I'm bringing this up is you asked the question, why did you do this? And I think if I look deep down, why did I really do this? Is so I could learn about myself, so I could learn self-love, so I could learn to be a better partner. And now that I'm in a fantastic relationship, dating doesn't excite me as much as it used to because I kind of got what I wanted out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love that you went on so many dates, first of all. Like in 1 year to go on that many dates, I think is you were busy for
No
sure.
doubt, I was busy.
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of dates a week will definitely keep you on your toes. And then the
Yeah.
folks reaching back out to you is so interesting because I think about the dates that I went on, especially after my divorce. Like, there's no way I was going to call up a guy that I went on a date with and go, "Hey, what's your take on my pro?" Like, none of them really had that level of, I guess, intimacy whenever you're talking to somebody, or openness maybe whenever you're talking to somebody
Yeah.
on a first or second date or something like that. It never would have occurred to me to ask the guy. So
Well, why that happened was in many cases I didn't physically meet those women. They
mm,
were just people I talked to. A lot of times they could have been, hundreds of miles away. So
yeah.
there was that buffer of anonymity, but also
Okay.
there was this shared experience. Like you went through divorce, yeah, I went through divorce. You had this happen, yeah, I had this happen. So there was all this, intimacy built not from a physical attraction perspective, but just purely as a friendship. I mean,
Yeah.
I made my dearest best friend is a woman I actually did meet online, only because she lived local, and she's my dearest best friend, because we never dated. Never, I mean, we met once, on a date, but it was
Yeah.
like more like a meeting. We never kissed, nothing like that. But she became my therapist, and I became her therapist.
Oh, you gotta love love a good friend you can just call up and chat with and get some things off your chest with. That's great. Well, that's a neat way to stumble into relationship coaching. I feel like now folks are just after a little bit of money and what they perceive as kind of an easy thing to do because you're telling other people, how you would react and everything. But getting into it
Yeah.
that long ago, it was completely different.
Oh gosh, swipe dating changed everything
Yeah.
because in the past, when we had our laptops, our desktops, Match.com in particular, I mean, you could write a 300 or like a 500 word essay, or
Yeah.
even longer than that. You could write 1,000 words, I believe. Yahoo Personals was the same, AOL Personals, OkCupid, all of those. There was more robustness to it. And now with the swipe apps, there's limited information. You're making these quick decisions. Uh, and it's marginalized people because of it, unfortunately. And add to that the proliferation of social media affecting how people just view one another, that so much has changed really since about 2015, 16, for the last 10 years. That meeting people has become harder than ever before.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, well, let me reframe that. Meeting people is still to some degree available, but meeting emotionally healthy people is becoming progressively harder.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's really fair because you can meet people left and right. I mean, it's
Yeah,
very similar to just getting a bunch of friends or followers on LinkedIn or wherever, but those that doesn't make them real connections, right?
yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly.
What's something that
And
folks, go ahead.
well, I was also going to say that it makes it easy. Like from the male perspective, it makes it easy to connect purely for sexual purposes and not necessarily, virtuous relationships and that sort of thing. It's made that much easier for a lot of men who get swiped on a lot. For the guys, for that 10 to 20% of men who constantly get the swiping, it's created an abundance of opportunities for them. And 80% of the women are competing for 10% of the top tiered men. So
Yeah.
for those guys, it's created a lot of opportunity for short-lived experiences. And sadly, a lot of the people that would be genuinely good potential partners get missed because they don't present themselves in a way that seems attractive.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very much, you have to have that instant, very
Yeah.
instant. And they say whenever you write something, it's exactly how you want to be perceived, but a photo and interaction isn't necessarily the same as
No.
that.
Yeah.
What's something that folks are always surprised to learn about you?
Mm. Well, I do talk about, I am a psychonaut, which means I have a curiosity for psychedelics. And this was birthed after my son passed away. I felt a desire to connect with him at a spiritual level, and I believe that psychedelics like psilocybin and some other types of psychedelics have properties in them that allow you to connect to the other side. And so I began a journey shortly after he passed away. And I've had amazing experiences along the way. So that's usually something people are surprised at, partially because there's this taboo
Mm-hmm.
around its legality. And what's fascinating to me is in most every part of the world, there's no issue with it. It's been used for medicinal purposes and spiritual purposes for thousands of years. People in the United States are a little bit uptight because they believe that there's something naughty or bad about it. And that's just a construct created by a few politicians some 50 years ago. But it has amazing properties to take an individual to places that you might not otherwise get through just standard meditation.
Yeah. And do you feel like it did what you set out to do and helped you connect with your
Oh,
son spiritually? Yeah.
continues to do it. I just did it 3 days ago for my birthday, which was 3 days ago, and I did it with my partner, and we had some interesting insights into both our relationship and our connection to the divine and that sort of thing. So every time that I partake, I have always a unique experience. But
Yeah.
it's allowed me to peel layers of places where I have fear and I have judgments and I have limiting beliefs and I have, um, you know, um, you know, guilt and shame and all these, and it's allowed
Mm.
me to peel those layers.
Yeah, yeah. It's really difficult. I mean, whenever you tell someone, "Oh, I've done psychedelics," or "I love to do psychedelics," or that kind of thing, I think people have a really certain perception of what that kind of person looks like, and it's not. We've talked about psychedelics so many times on this show, and it's like every person just looks different. They look unique to themselves, and there's not a common thread necessarily, except that they all feel like they got something positive out of it. So I love
Yeah,
that.
most of the time. But I mean, I've had ego death where I've stared my into the abyss of my identity, and there's been some painful moments
Mm,
of fear that was already inside of me. It just seems to magnify when you're on the medicine. So,
yeah, yeah. You mentioned the passing of your son. So, what did those first months after losing Connor, what did that look like for you?
you know, what was interesting, and it was to the extent that I was most likely in shock
Yeah.
in the beginning, I felt a sense of numbness, not not deep suffering or anything like that, but just an overall numbness. And and I remember being at his funeral and giving the eulogy, And I stopped in the middle of my speech and I turned to everybody and I said, we could all choose to grieve in suffering or grieve with love. And and at that time when I said it, I really didn't know what I was saying. I just felt like those words just come out of my mouth. And I wanted to examine what it meant to grieve with love. What does that mean? And I'm still, by the way, I still don't have an answer per se,
Yeah.
but it was for me, it was acceptance, it was compassion, it was gratitude for our time together. It was, I wanted to focus on love and not the absence of him.
Yeah.
And not from a gaslighting spiritual bypass type of way. I mean, and I might have completely been spiritually bypassing myself. I don't know. I only know that I chose to embrace what love meant to me
Mm-hmm.
and embody that as a way to honor him going forward, rather because I know he would not want anyone in his family to suffer. Anyone who he
Yeah.
loved or loved him, they wouldn't want him to suffer. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to make the choice to love. And why I say the choice is when we think of love, there's this grand expectation that's just there. And I believe love is a verb, as a noun, all those things. In other words, it's a choice. And so I made the choice to lean into it from as much gratitude, appreciation, acceptance, compassion, care around myself, and honor his life that way.
Yeah. I so I mean, just taking that and turning it into this idea of love and loving through grief. Um it sounds a little bit avoidant, but also a lot of just embracing what you were going through at the time. Did you
Yeah.
go ahead?
Do I? No, go ahead. Do I?
I was just gonna say, did you recognize that at the time, or anywhere around that time, or did you feel like you were reconciling your experience and it was as it should have been?
I'm going to say the latter. I
Mm.
was reconciling the experience, but I certainly have examined it, and it's been 8 years and a month ago. And and I've examined well, is this spiritually bypassing? Was it avoidant?
Mm-hmm.
Is it denial?
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, these are things that I don't know. Other people might say that's what they are,
Right.
but I don't feel that's what they are. It could be that's what they are. I don't know. Um, but I do know I'm at peace with it. So if I'm at peace with it, then that's what matters most.
Yeah.
I do my best. He has a way of showing up in his own unique way. Um, Yellow butterflies represent him to me. His nickname is Salty, and so I can't tell you how many times, even 8 years later, I'll get somebody who's driving on the street and they see a sign on the back of someone's car that says Salty. They'll take a picture and text it to me. I mean, to this day, it
Oh,
still
I
happens.
love
And
that.
that to me is him saying hi,
Yeah.
so and doing the psychedelics allowed me to connect with him. I remember 3 years ago, I was having a journey and I was connecting with him, and he said, Dad, stop bugging me. I'm doing fine. And I mean, I heard that as clear as day. Am I making that up? I don't know. I'm not here to say I'm some medium or something like that, but if it feels true for me, then I'm going to accept it that way.
Yeah.
And when we think of loss, there's this pain associated with loss. And yet, in so many cultures, the transition of life is a beautiful experience, that's
Mm-hmm.
celebrated in so many other cultures. And it's only, grieved with pain here, particularly in the United States. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that way, whether it's the loss of a child, the loss of a parent, loss of a loved one, or even a breakup. We are suckling on the nipple of victim consciousness here in the United States. And God forbid somebody ghosts us and we are shamed in that experience, or someone breaks up with us and it's like this painful experience. You know, that's just a construct in my mind that we punish ourselves,
Mm.
and not to say I'm not guilty of this. I'm still scratching the ant's belly on this thing called self-love that I wrote about. And the book was birthed 2 months after he passed is when I started writing it. And it was published 9 months to the day after he passed.
Wow.
And it hit Amazon, bestseller in my category. I'm kind of proud of that.
You
Um,
should be.
and by the way, you don't have to sell a lot of books to get that. I mean, I sold
That's
a few,
okay.
but
You don't have to say that part. You can just say you
no,
hit
well, I'm both deprecating myself and being humble. But what my point is, it inspired me more than robbed me.
Yeah.
His passing actually made me learn the value of gratitude in a way I never knew before, because because life is precious and because it can be gone so quickly, is how many humans sit in gratitude on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a minute by minute basis. And since then, gratitude has been my through line, and I'm in a wonderful relationship that is just filled with so much gratitude between us, that's become the through line of what I believe is the essence of love, is the experience of gratitude. And that's the gift that I got from his passing.
That's phenomenal. So you said that this book came about shortly after his passing and then was fulfilled, 9 months later. Was there a specific moment that you remember where you were like, I'm gonna write a book. This is what I'm gonna build out of this?
So what comes to mind when you ask that question was I did a post on Facebook shortly after he passed, and that I feel inspired to write a book. Just a simple one sentence post, and I got a number of messages, but one in particular said, "Do you need help writing it?" And I'm like, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah." And so and I said, "This is what I have in mind." She goes, I'm in the process of doing something where I have a lot of free time. I'd love to ghostwrite it for you. And and I said, "What's it gonna cost?" And she goes, "It's my gift to Connor." So
Oh.
I knew that was her name is Jennifer Matthews. I want to give her credit. And I knew that in that moment there was a divine connection. And
Hmm.
what happened was, I pre-recorded 30 chapters, that were about 10 minutes each. And then she'd listened to the audio. This is before AI and
Yeah.
transcripts and everything. And then she put music to it. She took my words and was able to craft it in a, colorful way. So I feel like that was a divine connection happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really wonderful. And just the you doing the post and then her saying this is my gift to Connor, like that's really, really amazing.
Oh, I mean, to this day, I'm still in much gratitude. And I mean, I did give her a little bit of money, and she's like,
Yeah.
"No, no, no, it's not necessary."
Yeah. So these two huge losses of your son and your career, obviously not equating the two, but then also a divorce. How did you go about recovering and healing? Obviously, those are different recoveries and different healings, but did you go to therapy at any point? Was it mostly self-directed work? How'd you go about it?
So thank you for asking. So when I look at my life, in between 2005 and 2008 was when I was going through a divorce. I lost my high-end corporate job, and then the market crash of
Yeah.
2008. My identity was pummeled. I mean, absolutely pummeled. And And when particularly men wrap their identity with their professional life. And so I was in the pit of despair. I was in abyss for quite some time. And I remember the movie The Secret came out. And when
Mm-hmm.
watching it, I'm like, oh, this feels familiar to me. Like this message feels familiar to me. And so I started to embrace law of attraction and different modalities like listening to Wayne Dyer or Abraham Hicks, just to name a few. And along the way, I started to hire coaches to eventually help me in a professional capacity, but emotional capacity. I was in relationship with a therapist for 6 years on and off because we broke up a couple times. And I unbeknownst to me, and this is while I began my dating coaching career, she was reparenting me along the way. um, and then I have gone to therapy. I've done the Hoffman process. I've done
Mm-hmm.
Insight Institute or seminars. I've done at least 3,000 hours of personal development workshops and trainings, um, up and through before he passed away and then after. And what happened was a lot of emotional scaffolding had been built in my life from about 2005 through 2000. He passed in 2018, but about 2019, 2020. So for about a 15-year period, I call it emotional scaffolding. In other words, I believe, and I did the Course in Miracles. I forgot to mention that too. And Marianne Williamson, Return to Love. I mean, I could name book after book after book that I read. Um, why that's so important is that emotional scaffolding prepared me for when he did pass away.
Mm.
And so I feel as though I didn't suffer as much because I built up this emotional container of rebuilding my life from my identity standpoint. And then in 2023, I was in a significant relationship where I lived with someone, but she didn't like living. She moved from Chicago to Los Angeles, and she didn't like living in Los
Mm.
Angeles. And I think ultimately she wasn't in love with me. And losing that relationship also taught me loss in a different way. And in a sense, what I gleaned from that, and I was very much in love with her. But I was in love with her from a insecure attachment
Mm-hmm.
vantage point. I was in love with the idea of what we had, but I recognized that I wasn't fully expressed in this love. And going through that emotional shift allowed me to view love in a completely different way. So it was preparing me for the relationship I'm in now. So it took me 20 years to from the divorce to today, or it took me 20 years to prepare for the love that I'm in now. And I would, if she was sitting here right now, she would tell you how we have this amazing loving relationship. We live together, and we're very much two peas in a pod, and we're in it till our last breath, or one of our last breaths.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been able to be here if I didn't go through each stepping stone that brought me to where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, 20 years is a long time to get to where you feel like you trust yourself. Does it always take 20 years, or how do you rebuild that trust in yourself after a marriage falls apart?
Mm.
Here's where I need the taco.
Here's the thing. There's this belief 20 is a long time, and in the scheme of the earth, it's like one tenth of one tenth of
Yes.
one tenth of one tenth of one tenth of 1 second, in the scheme of earth. So, that's a construct, a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It takes as long as it's needed to take. Let me just
Yeah.
say that for those listening. And self awareness, it requires a self examined life. It requires to be aware of your negative patterns, your limiting beliefs, your insecurities, your fears, your judgments, how your actions affect another person, and to really be able to be a witness to your thoughts. And most humans think they do this, That's the illusion and delusion most humans live in. Um, and it requires a real fortitude of conviction to want to live a self-examined life, meaning, you are the creator of all your experiences,
Mm-hmm.
okay? How you feel about things. And as I said earlier in this broadcast, here in the United States, we are suckling on the nipple of victim consciousness. We are suckling on the nipple of, I need you to love me so I can feel good about myself. We
Yeah.
are we are habitual in this belief that I need someone else to love me so I can feel good about ourselves, because our number one emotional health issue, according to Jonathan Aslay, this is not a fact, but I think our number one emotional health issue is I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and I'm not likable, hence the need for self love. And when you adopt a self love philosophy, you're not a victim to any experience. You might be experiencing something, but you're not a victim to it.
Yeah. Would you say that's one of the biggest self-worth traps that people fall into after a divorce, is just believing that they need other people to provide that to them versus finding it within themselves?
I think humans go through a wave of things. I mean, there's the some that I think immediately need to fill that void right
Mm-hmm.
away.
Yeah.
That actually happens to men a lot. They can be, they're not good at being by themselves. So it's one of the reasons why a lot of men get divorced. They remarry the next person they meet. That happens, or the opposite happens. They become players and that sort of thing. I think people fall into three categories. They fall into the category of um, entitled. They feel like they're entitled to everything, kind of thing. We see that with, I would say, gold diggers or players. They feel very entitled. Then there's the doormat type of person that doesn't feel worthy of anything, and they'll accept crumbs. And then everybody else is in the middle to some degree. So that's where I think people fall in the category. After divorce, some people go wild and crazy, and they just want to date as many people and have sex with as many people as they can, and justify it and rationalize it for themselves. I think other people take time and work on themselves. There's a litany of different experiences.
Yeah.
And what makes divorce unique is that it's the unraveling of the tapestry of a life you have with another person. So to
Mm-hmm.
regain your sovereignty requires, some deep intentionality. And sadly, most people aren't intentional. They're reactional, but they're not intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it takes a lot to even recognize everything that was tied, almost no matter how long you were married, but there's just
Yeah.
so much that you build this life and you envision your future, and even if your marriage wasn't a happy one, wasn't a safe one in some cases, that's still a lot to unravel. It's still a lot to have to go back and figure out, okay, well, where am I after this, and how do I move on as this new person, because that old person is no longer there. It's just not the
Yeah.
reality anymore.
And you might be intertwined with that old
Mhm.
person,
Yeah.
especially if you have children and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So, roughly 75% of singles who are in the dating marketplace over 45 years old are divorced, and I would roughly say 80% of them have children. That's not a statement of fact, that's anecdotal on my part. But it's probably pretty close to
Yeah.
accurate. So, and with it comes, whether we call it baggage or luggage or wounds or traumas, there's the childhood wounds that we have growing up that define who we are. And then we have our adult traumas that make up more of who we are. And, a lot of humans are suffering because they haven't addressed these things. And hence why they have negative patterns, limiting beliefs, judgments, triggers, all these juicy therapy words that comes out. And a self-examined person, it took me 20 years. It took me, I would say it took me a good 15 years of going through the pit of despair and digging my way
Mm.
out. Um, and I'm still scratching the ant's belly in the sense of of all of this stuff. I mean, if I told you the ridiculous parts of who I am, I laugh at who I am because most people would think I'm crazy. My beloved calls me extra. But we're both noodlers. Her nickname for me is Noodles, and we're always, she says, you start your day trying to come up with six impossible things like Alice in Wonderland talks about. And that is me. I'm always noodling. And but by the way, but she's my twin. You know,
Yes.
she's like,
She
that's our,
recognizes
we,
it.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, well, it's funny is when I see it in her, I'm like looking at me, and when she sees in me, she's looking at her. But I mean, that's our playground. We get up every morning. We're like in the sandbox, a bunch of 4-year-olds going, "Let's make mud pies with ideas and thoughts and philosophies and
Yeah.
perceptions and that sort of thing." And we spend a lot of time talking about our relationship. We look at our relationship as there's a her and a me, and the relationship is that Venn diagram, and it's a separate entity. So we spend a fair amount of time talking about the relationship, and most people have duct tape on their mouth when it comes to their relationship.
Yeah. What does one of those conversations look like where you're talking about your relationship as this other entity?
So in the early days, it started by where were we before we met? Where were we? Like and we've talked about, I mean, we know each other's past relationships
Mm-hmm.
intimately. Like she knows my two significant relationships and my ex-spouse. I know about her two significant relationship and her ex-spouse, and we intimately know the backstory.
Yeah.
Now, do I know it at a granular level? No, I don't know the actual, but I know the baseline of how she got to where she is today and vice versa. So first it started by this is how we got to where we're at. Now,
Yeah.
some people are fearful to talk about the past. Some people will avoid talking about the past. Some men and women, well, we don't need to talk about the past. And I'm in complete disagreement. The past gives you insight into who this person is today. That's
Yeah.
number one. Number two is where are we at today? Like, where are we at today in our relationship? And particularly, we express appreciation to one another multiple times a day. We
Mm-hmm.
express affection towards one another multiple times a day. We express um, acceptance of each other's prickly parts or picadillos, as Robin Williams said in the movie Good Will Hunting. He called it picadillos. I used to call it the Sally, which represents Harry Met Sally, which would be our neurotic parts, our parts of us that are crazy to people. We even started with our red flags. Like I told her my biggest red flag in dating me is I'm not a good world traveler. Like every woman's dating app said, have a passport, we'll travel, have a passport, we'll travel. And I'm not good at world traveling. I get incredibly nervous and scared when I'm in a country that doesn't feel safe to me. I know this about myself. Now, I'm also not as bad as I make it out to be. I wanted to make it so scary, but I'm actually much better at it than I say. But I know that of myself. I know I can be neurotic at times. But that's where I'm at. So where we were, where we're at, and then where are we going? Like
Mm-hmm.
where do we want this relationship to go? And it started with at first, we talked about living together would be one thing. We've talked about how we would nurture one another if one of us have gotten sick. Like we're all in, ride or die in this relationship. So where do we talk about if we want to live in another country. So to repeat, how we got to where we're at, where are we, and then where do we want to go? That's the conversation that we have on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And we play this game called the "and" game, which are thought-provoking questions. I don't have an example of one right now. I'd have to go grab the box. But we just did it on my birthday. We went through 30 different unique personality questions and how we'd react. It's called the "and" game, and we were doing the long-term couples edition.
Oh,
So
wait, wait, wait.
that's
Oh, you're gonna love this. Hold on.
Yeah.
Whoops. As I throw everything on my desk trying to dig this out. Okay, you might just have to trust me because it doesn't want to come out of this thing.
Yes, the end game. Is that the dating edition?
Uh, this is the dating edition. I also have the
Yeah.
couples edition somewhere.
Yeah, they have a couples edition, a
Yes.
long-term couples edition. They have a friends edition. We
Yep.
did the dating edition early. I think we
Yeah.
did it on our second date.
They are the question cards. Yes, they are. That is what they are. Yep. 488 was asking if those are the question cards because we
Yeah.
did this. I think we made it all the way through all the cards eventually. Yeah, I love it.
People think that, asking questions is like an interview. And I'm like, asking questions is how you get to know someone. And people that criticize interviews, I'm like, no, you want to fucking interrogate people on a first date. Now,
Yes.
I'm saying it tongue in cheek. Interrogation means getting to what interrogating is. You just want to get to the truth. So by on a date, it's like we have this narrative in the United States. It's about attraction and entertainment and romance and physical connection, and it should just be fun. That's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Fun happens when you agree to explore a relationship. Romance should be reserved for people that are in a relationship, not as an entry point to a relationship. Because if that was so fucking good, and I know I'm cursing a lot, then why are people miserable when they've had intense chemistry and it blows up?
Yeah.
So it's time to go, you know what? It's okay to ask deep questions to see if you're on the same page with one another.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit righteous when I say this, so you could hear my bombastic tone right now. It's because I believe that, people that focus on fun and they're focusing on getting their physical needs met are finding themselves miserable when the thing ends in a few weeks or months later
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
didn't vet properly.
Mm-hmm. No, so first of all, 488 loves to have the what would you do if questions or the if you could
Yes.
only X or Y or the latest one that he didn't actually make me answer was if you could only keep three David Bowie songs, which three would you keep? And there's no way I can pick on there's no way for me to pick only three. Uh, and he knows that, so it was a little bit of a torture question. But to be fair, I did ask him if he could only keep one metal band, what metal band would it be? So, but yeah, like
Okay.
I love the questions, and I feel like getting to know somebody requires asking a lot of questions that may feel a little uncomfortable to ask. But yeah, no, I love that conversation that you're having with your partner of it's kind of present, past, and future, right?
Well, but it's also like doing the end game, it requires going a little bit deeper. So it's
Yeah,
one thing answering the question, but then it's like, what inspired you to answer it that way? Why did you answer it? Like
yeah,
it's the real getting to know is not the answer to the question, it's what's underneath the answer to the question. And now my partner and I both have a sales background, so communication is easy for us to talk to strangers. The reality is in dating today, because we're meeting complete strangers, you don't know their backstory, you don't know their values, you don't know their culture, the way they were raised, you don't have any, even one degree of separation. You might have 2 or 3 degrees of separation. Because of that, the and game is a good way to get something started. But ultimately, what it is about building trust. And for the last 20, we've so operated dating on getting the physical part of it,
yeah,
so quickly. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, the joke was, the 3 date rule. If you haven't gotten laid by the third date, you're not getting a fourth date. And there's no trust built. And I mean, it's very rare that you have trust built in 3 dates, let alone 300
mm-hmm,
dates. But I
yeah,
mean, I'm joking about that. But or 30 dates. It's like if you're going to cavalierly approach the dating process, it's no wonder it's a fucking dysfunctional clusterfuck out there in
yeah,
dating because so many people and act without intentionality. And here's the thing, Mama Fox Fire, is Women think they're the ones intentional, and they're not. They're just as bad at it as men. Women point the finger at men, and men point the finger at women.
Yeah.
And the reality is they should be pointing the finger at themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna steer us back to the topic because I know we got a little bit off, and that's my bad because
All
I
right.
always go down these rabbit holes. But now I'm so giddy that I happen to have what you were talking about within arm's reach. But all right, so you get divorced. How do you know when you're actually ready to date versus you're just lonely and rushing it, or the opposite, I guess, would be how do you know if you're leaning on, oh, I'm going to work on myself as an excuse to avoid another relationship out of fear?
Yeah, I would say it's readiness is difficult for an individual to know. So, if and most people operate by getting their physical needs met, but you'd have to, your desire, your capacity, and your vision for a relationship. So, your desire, capacity, and vision has to exceed your past hurts, your fears, and your fantasies about a relationship. So
Mm,
your desire, like like so if you don't, like, if you're a man, for example, and you're like, yeah, I'm not looking for anything serious, okay? You like that's what you say. I don't want anything serious. Well, then your desire is very weak for a serious relationship. And within that, are you still talking to an ex? Are you still, reeling over an ex? You might have fear. You might have past hurts. You might have a fantasy. A lot of people have fantasy about a relationship. They're
mm,
idealizing a relationship. So if the fantasy, past hurts, or fear exceeds your desire, your capacity, or your vision, then you're not ready. It's when it's the other way around. And then it doesn't mean that you still don't have fear or a fantasy or past hurts, but you're stronger because you're fully committed. You're committed to commitment. I want everyone to write that down. You're committed to commitment. And when you're committed to commitment, that's when you're ready.
yeah. Now, we talked a little bit about kind of the immaturity of some things, and I know that you've said in other shows and everything that mature love is something that's really rare. So, what does mature love look like, and why do you think it's so hard to find?
You know, I've examined this question, and most humans are operating on dependent love or counter-dependent love, and it's also known as anxious or avoidant love
Mm-hmm.
attachment style. And within each category, there's subcategories, but let's break it down to those two, anxious and avoidant. And while the authors of the book claim 50% of the population are secure, I believe that's grossly overstated. I think most humans are operating at an insecure attachment to another human being, believing it's love. And I say this because after examining my previous relationship, and I really thought I was in a mature, loving relationship, I was really insecurely attached. So I think mature love is the place where you're like, I'm in service to the other person. Like, I'm fully in service to my partner. Now, do I have my needs, wants, and desires? Absolutely. But it is at the same level that I give. My needs or wants and desires, or my giving of her to her needs and wants and desires, are at an equal level of my own. And because we're equal in that space of being in service to each other, I believe that's mature love. And it requires, a lot of people might be there. I look at the difference between in love and loving a person. I think loving a person might be deep care, but in love is I'm all in. I'm riding or dying with this relationship. I don't have doubts. I'm not poking holes. I'm not going, God, I wish there was something different. You are in such absolute acceptance, um, attention, appreciation, acceptance. What's the other one? Attention, affection, appreciation, acceptance. Attention, affection, appreciation, acceptance. Those four, excuse me. You're in such a state of that that to me is mature love.
Yeah. Do you think that that's,
Oh, and you're both at the same level too.
yeah,
Like it's like a lot of people, particularly women, feel like they have what I call martyr complex. I gave so much to this relationship. Well, it was in imbalance. You chose somebody who wasn't giving as much, and you're a martyr because you gave more. That's on you. That's not on him.
yeah. I mean, do you feel like that is the case from the very start every time? Do you think that that's something that develops over time, or are those signs there?
I have a belief that you can figure this shit out in 90 days, at the most 6 months. You know, if you're seeing each other on a regular basis, you are seeing each other on average of 2 or 3 or 4 times a week, doing um, social activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, traveling together, teamwork, building skills both in your personal and your professional life, intimacy, both physical and emotional intimacy. If this is the makeup of this dynamic that you have, then if you haven't experienced in love within 3 to 6 months, it's probably never going to show up, because your past hurts, your fears, or your fantasy is exceeding your desire, capacity, or vision.
Yeah. I know you've also talked about the little decisions that people make early, and maybe this kind of feeds into what you're saying of the 6 months, but the little things like splitting the bill or who pays, those kinds of things. What do
Yeah.
those early dating moments, what do those indicate about compatibility long term?
So, we are raised with such a traditional expectation around the way dating should be. Okay, so there's the should be, type of thing. And it's particularly that men lead the process. The traditional narrative is the man must climb to the highest room of the tallest tower, and he has to prove his worth, and he has to choose her. And what we are seeing today is men want to be chosen just as much as women. So let's
Hmm.
throw that bullshit narrative out the door. And I remember, I'll give you an example. I remember I was on a date, first date. This was back in 2014, and our date happened to be on Halloween. We decided to get dressed up and go to a dive bar for Halloween, and and
It's
um,
quite a
and we
first
got to
date.
as a first date. We went as she was a go-go dancer, and I was a 70s hippie, and she was a
Amazing.
60s go-go dancer. So I had the tie-dye, that sort of thing. And I remember going to the bar, and I bought the first round of drinks. And for whatever reason, I paid cash. Normally, I just give my credit card, but I gave him 20. I think the bill came out to a perfect $17. I gave him 20,
Yeah.
with the tip. So it was time for a second round. And I was getting ready to pay with my credit card, leaving it. And she goes, I've got it. And I said, no, no, I got it. And she goes, I've got it. And I go, no, no, I got it. And then she did it again. Now, some women would say she was in her masculine energy. She was depriving me of my capacity to be a provider. Okay, that's the narrative. What she did next floored me. She put her hand on my arm, looked me straight in the eye, and said, Jonathan, I really appreciated that you treated the first round of drinks. Will you allow me to show you my appreciation by treating you, because you're worth it? In that moment, I thought to myself, she could be a partner. Like
Hmm.
in that very moment, because she was operating from a place of generosity. We have a narrative of such, particularly around money and dating and men and all this stuff. And we wonder why money ends up being the second leading cause of relationship divorce, happens to be around money. So what couples do, by the way, the and game has money questions
It
associated
does.
with it,
Yes, it does.
and I think those are things you want to get out of the way very quickly.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lesson. By the way, I posted that in a group of 15,000 men. I shared that story. I had over 1,000 comments. This is a Facebook group. And you know what? Most of the men said, all but one said, she's a unicorn. She's one of a kind. She's a keeper. Don't let her go. She's partnership material. And one guy was in the narrative, I would never let a woman pay for anything. I bet you that guy's a control freak too, by the way. But what that said was, you know what? It said a lot about the narrative is that in this dynamic, we have these traditional norms and expectations. But what do people want in the core? They want to be appreciated. They want to be accepted. They want to be loved for who they are. It's not about the traditional expectations. It's about connection. And what she was saying to me when she said, you're worth it, she literally was putting her money where her mouth is.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, it sounds like she was just a very good communicator. I mean,
Yeah.
just to be able to express that in that way is fantastic.
Yeah, I've been fortunate that I had been blessed with women who are strong, smart, successful, confident, sure of themselves, that sort of thing, had a healthy dose of self-love. And so they were very clear in their communication. And my partner is the epitome of that. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. What's a red flag that people over 40 keep ignoring whenever they do start dating again after a divorce? And what should they do instead?
I think the number one red flag is the person who throws any previous partner under the bus.
Mm,
And they act as if they had no culpability. They take no ownership on their part of the ending of the relationship. And listen, let me be clear. I recognize that under physical abuse, definitely I'm not suggesting that isn't a warranted circumstance. But short of that, there's two people, in every relationship. And if you're not taking ownership in your part, then that's a gigantic red flag, because there's something hiding there, and it will surface again. Trust me. The person who can take ownership of their part most likely is self-aware and self-examined. So much so that and that again, if even if you take only 3% ownership, that's all you need to take. But taking it matters.
yeah. It can be, I know that whenever you're talking about past relationships with a potential partner, it's like you don't want to put yourself in a negative light. So it can be really tempting to kind of say, oh, that one wasn't me. That one wasn't me. That was because of XYZ, or that was because of this and that. How honest do you get on, first, second, third dates?
I was very upfront with my partner. I said, look, I was an unconscious husband when I got married. I was brought up with the, go to college, get a job, meet someone, get married, buy a house, start a family. Greed is good. The movie Wall Street was playing in the back of my head when I got married, even though I got married years later. And I was a very unconscious husband. I was very forthright with most everybody I've ever been with. Now, since then, it's progressively, I've done a lot of personal development work. I shared with you, to this day, I have over 20,000 hours of coaching other people, 3,000 hours of personal development workshops and trainings, that sort of thing. But I had no qualms about sharing my culpability at the ending of my marriage, for example, and even my other two previous relationships. But I was blessed. Most of my relationship ending since then was more of a conscious uncoupling,
Yeah.
which certainly is a green flag. When people have unconscious uncouplings, that's another red flag, without this examination of why it ended up the way it did, and without taking ownership of it. Personal responsibility is what progresses a relationship going forward. And if you're pointing the finger or if you're throwing someone under the bus, that's also an indication you're not over it.
Yeah.
You still hold resentment. And that energy is a block to love. And if you're blocking love, it's going to be hard to open up to another new person. But we have this adopted philosophy, well, the next person will be better, because we're suckling on that nipple I talked about of I need you to love me so I can feel good about myself.
Yeah.
Not you personally, but.
No, I wasn't taking it personally. Don't worry. So we've talked a little bit about online dating, and I know that online dating can be a little polarizing. Sometimes it gets a bad reputation, but if there's somebody who is scrolling the dating apps right now and feeling a little hopeless, what's one specific thing you'd tell them to do differently this week?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, swipe right on all the people you would normally swipe left. Just kidding. But there might be some value in that. You know what I'd invite everyone to do? This is something I'm inviting everyone to do. Shift your energy. And when you are on the app and you're swiping left, which means not interested, you know what? Send that swipe left, but say, I'm sending you love. I'm sending you love. I'm sending you love. Look, you see, a lot of people, and I've seen this more so with women than men, but men do this equally, is they look at someone whose profile that somebody has written them, and they go, how dare that person write me? I would never choose that person. I mean, there's such radical judgment in that. Like you are somehow better than that person. So number one, I've seen this so many times. I can't believe that guy wrote me. I would never choose him. You know what? That was a brave thing he did, okay? And even if it's, even if he was just chasing sex, he made an overture, okay? I'm not saying it's, I don't want to put it as a right or wrong. But if you could just say, I send you love, I send you love, I send you love, you know what you're telling the universe? Send me love. Send me love.
Yeah.
And you're actually that little mindset shift could make all the difference. If we just start looking at people as human beings and not some level of judgment.
Yeah. I like that because often whenever you're going through and evaluating people especially on an app, it's so easy to be super impersonal and to just go, oh, I'm not interested. Even if you're not going, ew, why? Even if you're just going, I'm not interested. It's so easy to do that without humanizing a little bit. And so intentionally going, it's a no, but I'm sending you that love. I think that's a really nice way to look at it.
So can I tell you, I don't think it's one of your questions, but can I tell you how my partner and I ended up with each other?
I would love that.
Okay. So our journey started, I think, in the mid or late summer of 2024. And she had written me on Bumble. And I wrote her back, and somehow we got into this discussion about masculine and feminine energy and polarity. I don't know, how it got up in that way, but we were having some discourse around that. And then it faded. And then about 5 months later, I saw her on Match.com. So I wrote her and I go, hey, do you remember me? And she's like, yeah, vaguely. And then it went nowhere, okay? And then 6 months after that, she writes me on Hinge. So we went from Bumble to Match to Hinge, okay? And she wrote me on Hinge, and she wrote me because I had a photograph of some books that I've read, like books like 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman, Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, If the Buddha Dated, The Hoffman Process, Untethered Soul. So she saw The Buddha Dated and she made a comment about that. And I said, hey, do you remember me? We spoke before. And she didn't remember. I'm like, God, how can I not be memorable? So we started a little dialogue, and she said something to me. She goes, people who lack curiosity might also lack imagination. And I'm like, click, ding, 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 because I'm radically curious. So we jumped on a phone call and we talked on the phone for like 3 hours. And about 2 hours into the phone call, it turns out we had mutual friends, a number of mutual friends. So we kind of ran in the same circles, just a little bit different side of the prism, so to speak. So we met for coffee. Now we met for coffee at a very high-end restaurant or hotel in Marina del Rey, overlooking the marina. So, but we had coffee and we ended up having a little bit of brunch too. Um, and but there wasn't a love connection when we first met. There was curiosity, and we ended up we talked for 5 hours. We had a great time. We're both very curious people, the end game, that sort of thing. So we went our separate ways, and I'm like, yeah, she's not the one, and for whatever reason. And there's a story to that too. So 2 days later, I think she texted me and I said, let's jump on a phone call. And during the phone call, she said, well, Jonathan, what do you think? I said, I'll be honest with you, I'm neutral. And she goes, I'm neutral too. We end up spending 5 hours trying to figure out why we were neutral because we had all this in common. So the next day rolls around and I'm like, God, I had so much fun talking to her. So I texted her in the morning and we end up having a 2-hour chat. And then later that evening, we had a 3-hour chat. And the next day we had a 3-hour chat in the evening. I mean, we had 5-hour chats for 10 days in a row.
Yeah.
And along the way, we're sharing our backstory. How did we get to where we're, because we're becoming really good friends. We were developing the friendship. Like I was really beginning to like this person. And I remember it was 11 days later, I woke up and I can't stop thinking about her. So I called her up I called her the next morning and said, I can't stop thinking about you. And she goes, I kind of feel the same way. So I met her. I said, hey, I'm going to be driving by your home because I have to go to a funeral. Can I stop by and see you? She goes, yeah. And she made a drink. And the first thing I did was, and by the way, we had amassed 50 hours of conversations. I mean, I'm talking deep shit. And I just kissed her. I mean, I had permission, I got a green light. And we had this fantastic kiss. And it was like all of a sudden the fireworks were happening. And then we had a legitimate formal date, a week later. And I was at her house for 5 hours that night, just talking. We were like, what the fuck just happened? Like we were like in shock. What I realized later is she didn't trigger my insecure attachment wound. I realized every relationship I ever had was a triggering of my insecure attachment wound. Because she didn't trigger my insecure attachment wound, I didn't recognize that we had this great connection, but it wasn't driven by, we weren't each other's type. By the way, she said, you're not my type. I go, you're not my type either. But we were progressively getting more attracted to each other because we fell in love with the essence of who we are, not the shell of who we are. And now we are equally attracted to one another, but we almost blew it. But I think it's because we began with a friendship first, that it wasn't built on attraction, entertainment, romance, and physical connection. It was built through the emotional connection that we were able to flourish. And I would say we have a relationship very worthy of other people going, I wish I had what they had.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of friends first. I think that's the way. I think that's the way to go.
Well, the problem with friends first, it usually means no sex right away. That's not what friends first is. It's not about when you have sex. It's about the emotional connection and building trust with one another. That's what friends first is. Most people confuse it as the friend zone as being no sex. That's the sex, that's the icing on the cake. But but it's about building connection with one
Mm-hmm.
another, and it's not based on 3 months or 3 dates or anything. It's when genuine care and like for the other person
Yeah.
exists, and trust is super important. And trust isn't about fidelity. Trust is, I have this person's best interest at heart. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
looking at my best interest, I'm looking out for their best interest. That's trust.
Yeah. So I want to talk about self love a little bit because the way that you frame self love is very much not a feeling of, oh, I love myself. It's very much a practice of that. So walk us through what that practice looks like day to day.
You know, I believe that it's the examination of your fears, your insecurities, your negative patterns, your limiting beliefs, your judgments towards others, your actions towards others. It's examining those particular areas of your life and being able to bear the witness to your emotions as the observer. And and add to that, whenever you're feeling, self-love is the place where we all have an emotional 6-year-old inside of us. Self-love is the embracing of the emotional 6-year-old inside of us and saying, I've got your back. So most of the time, the emotional 6-year-old is in fear. They're in fight or flight kind of thing. And the adult in us is nurturing that part of us. It might be through meditation. It might be going to a therapist. It might be going into nature, as an example. It might be doing psychedelics. Uh, it might be taking care of your body, and I don't mean, manicures and pedicures, that's self-care, but, nurturing your body with good foods, nurturing your body with good thoughts. I mean, we, and through social media, we are constantly being poisoned with so much negativity, and that's causing distress in our lives. And so when you're in a state of distress, self-love is your job to regulate your emotions so you're feeling a sense of inner peace. Those are all little facets of it. And my book is 30 different practices, ranging from speak your truth, do it, to kindness, to your body is a machine, not a temple, meaning take good care of it, to don't let anyone fuck with your chi, to if it's sincere and from the heart, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. These are just, things happen for you, not to you. These are just simple principles, that's designed to shift your awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that I love to come back to is just the kind of the, what am I trying to say here? It's just
What are
the
you trying to say?
it's
Are
the
your tacos falling
my
apart?
tacos are falling apart in my own brain, which happens a lot more than I like to admit. No, it's the thought that, you know, you should have more love for yourself in general than you do for most other people. And that's hard to reconcile whenever you're in a very loving relationship. You want to have that equal out more. When you have kids, you want to have that equal out more. But in general, I think that people fall short a lot of the time of how much grace they give themselves. And a lot of what you're talking about, just all the concepts that you're talking about, they, to me, feed into that a little bit.
It's interesting. Most mornings I send my beloved a love note. And and is it okay if I share the one I sent today?
If it's okay with you, it's okay with me.
And this is kind of, that addresses what you said. So this is my note to her this morning, of all mornings. I said, "Good morning, my love. When I lean into my feelings about us, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude, and I find myself not wanting much more than what we have. Loving you and being loved by you fills my cup. In fact, the cup is overflowing. This state of overflow needs to go somewhere, and that's maybe why I'm, taking a break from work, because I'm in, I'm just expanding upon this because I want to, because what I wrote doesn't make sense. I feel like I have so much love to give. I want to give it in a new way
Yeah.
professionally. So that's I said, I'm lost. I said, I jokingly say it all started when I met you. And now I understand why. Wanting material things doesn't compare to the feeling loved by you and loved in life. We are blessed to have all that we need: a beautiful home, food on our table, our health, loving friends, and family nearby. And oh, and let's not forget our noodling minds. Ah, that's the best part of us, our curiosity. Baby, thank you for reaching out first and being curious. That changed both our lives. By the way, I freaking love you. Um, where I was going with this is, there is a saying, you have to love yourself before you can love
Mm-hmm.
another. And I don't think we ever fully love ourselves. But I also know that when you are in a practice of self love, self examination, when you're in a relationship where you're loving another person, that it amplifies love. I believe that this just amplifies it in such a way that I have this desire to give, like being on this podcast is me being in a state of love. I'm giving from my heart here. Everything here is sincere, and it's to want to better, people's lives. And so there's this amplification that happens when you're loving yourself and loving on another. And it's not that you ever fulfill it or whatnot. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a practice, but it begins to amplify. And a lot of people today, they've been so hurt in past relationships. They are, centering to themselves. I'm happy being single. I'm happy being alone. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to say it's a right or wrong, but there is this beautiful experience when you can be in relationship with another person, and work on your picadillos and work on your stuff too. My partner and I work on our stuff every day, our stuff that takes us away from our inner peace. And what's beautiful about it is we get to amplify it. And she joins me on videos now. I mean, I try to be a role model for the encouragement of both living an examined life and diving deep into what love really means. And what's interesting, uh, Foxfire, well, I'm going to call you Foxfire. What's interesting is on my dating profile on Match, I wrote the sentence, I want to explore the depths of love. Like, what does it really mean to love another? And I'm getting to experience, like, I got exactly what I wanted. I put it
Yeah.
out there, and, the message in the bottle was the dating app the essay. And I got that. I'm exploring, what does it really mean to love another? And it requires grace and compassion and understanding and acceptance and affection and appreciation and attention, and it requires a consciousness around it. See,
Mm-hmm.
most humans operate that love is just natural. It's just there. Maybe it's there for our children, but it's always one-sided with children, by the way. It's
I
us
have
giving to them,
teenagers.
not every.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not always the other way around. I mean, their presence makes up for it, um, but it requires an intentionality. It requires
Hmm.
presence, and most people just want it to happen without
Yeah.
the intentionality.
Yeah. Very much so. If there's someone who's listening right now, maybe they're in the middle of their own adversity, whether that's divorce or grief or job loss or whatever it is, what do you want them to hear from you in this conversation?
Oh, the quote that got me through most everything, all the pain that I've suffered, um, is it's a Disney quote that it's called "Keep Moving Forward." I remember seeing it when I watched Meet the Robinsons, I believe it was, and that quote stuck with me. There's something about forward movement, even if it's a baby step. And let me just share with everybody, there was a period in my life where I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up,
Mm.
from about 2005 to 2009. So for 4 years, I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up. It was that much pain. But I kept hearing, keep moving forward, keep moving forward, keep moving forward. And even if it's 1 inch, it's just move forward. And my hope is that no matter how bad it ever gets, and that will happen in some way, shape, or form. We will all experience it in some way, shape, or form. I just hope to encourage everyone to just keep moving a little bit forward each day, and don't give in to the doldrums.
Mm.
You have the capacity. We all have the capacity to shift our reality, and it just requires some intentionality.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Bite Mark couldn't be here tonight, but she did send this question ahead of time. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
Oh God, my favorite poem.
And she does consider songs to be poems. So if you're really stumped, you can
Oh.
pick a favorite
Well, I
song.
would say then my favorite song is "You Can't Get What You Want Till You Know What You Want," by Joe Jackson. That would be. I love the "Can't Get What You Want Till You Know What You Want" by Joe Jackson. My favorite poem or quote is my own.
I love that. Let's hear
Okay.
it.
Soulmates come into your life to teach you a lesson, and your true love goes to school with you each and every day holding hands. So the idea is that we have all these experiences of relationships that are all preparing us for us. But when you're with your soulmate, you go to school with them holding hands. So soulmates come into our lives to teach us a lesson, and our true love goes to school with us each and every day holding hands.
I
Is
love
that
that.
fair? Is that
That's
okay?
that's perfect. That's couldn't ask for
It's
anything
only
better.
because I have that memorized is why I shared it.
That's great. That's great. What is your favorite life hack?
Oh God, what is a good life hack? I think I like the idea that we're all spiritual beings having a human experience, and that if we are all energy, that we vibrate. We all have a frequency we run on, and to that extent, um, when we're in a state of gratitude and compassion and care, that frequency creates inner peace. So I would say my greatest life hack is to really practice gratitude. Oh, and breathing, by the way, learning to breathe. I mean, like really to calm your nervous system.
Yeah. And there's some great breathing techniques. There's all kinds of them too. It's like if you
Yeah.
just go on YouTube, and if you need some anxiety relief, if you need
Like
some
do a Wim
nervous system
Hof and
calm,
you'll really do.
yeah, I mean, whatever you're looking for, there's a breathing technique for it. So go try some. Well, it is time for the magic moment, and if I have a magic wand here, so if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception surrounding mental health, what would it be?
Oh, around mental health. Give me a second. I have a belief, and this is just my own belief. Most people are good people. We're all have shit,
Yeah,
in some way, shape, or form. Some worse than others, no doubt. But I think at the core, um, most people are good people. So if I could remove anything, it would be the judgments of others.
mm,
You know, um, you know, you don't know a person's life until you've walked not just a mile, but you've walked a lifetime with that person. And the minute we judge others, particularly with the least amount of information or limited information, I'd love to remove that because that's a mental health issue is judgments.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely, it
another
is.
another one I'd like to remove is shame and guilt and resentments and
Yes,
the
yes.
comparisons. Like I'd remove all of those, but I pick judgment, so we'll go with that one.
Yep, all of those are valid, most definitely. Well, I'm gonna just remind everybody, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the chat, and I'm gonna post your links for everybody to connect with you one more time. While I'm doing that, if there's anything we didn't get to cover, any stories or websites or resources or anything you got work going on, I'm gonna let you have the mic for just a minute while I do this.
So I invite everybody to read the book The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's not a dating or relationship book. It's really a great life hack book. It starts off by learning about the voices in your head or the roommates in your head, that sort of thing. That would be a fantastic resource. For those dating, I highly recommend reading the book 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman, along with Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. I invite you to read the book If the Buddha Dated. If the Buddha Dated is a great book to throw out the gender narratives and really look at each other from a heart-centered level. That's another book, If the Buddha Dated. There's another book called Existential Kink by Carolyn Elliott, and sadly she just passed away a few days ago, but she was a pioneer at looking and examining life. That's a great life hack book called Existential Kink. So I've rattled off a few. Is that good enough?
That's fantastic. These are great. I'm grabbing those links right now just so that everybody can go look at those and read them. Add them to your want to read list if you're a Goodreads reader like me, or if you want to buy them on Amazon, or however you want to go get them. That's up to you. But I really appreciate the resources and recommendations.
By the way. I see it. Wow, that's really good.
Yeah, yep. I try and just do it right away, partially because I truly do want people to have something they can click on immediately, but then also because if I don't do it right now, I'll forget.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So I have like 30 tabs open at all times, and it's all so that I don't forget things. So
this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And to everyone who's here with us live, I'm going to disconnect with Jonathon behind the scenes in just a second. I've got a puzzle for you guys to work on, so stick around for that in the meantime. I hope you got a lot out of our conversation tonight. I really loved and appreciated the reminder that you can't build that healthy relationship with someone else until you've built one with yourself first. So Jonathon, thank you so much for your honesty and just showing up today and sharing your story and sharing your smaller stories as well with our Even Tacos Fall Apart community. I just absolutely loved it. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
And to everybody who's watching, thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being exactly who you are. I will be right back. Do not go anywhere.